Hi, I have another book today. It is Mr. Shah's Shipshape Shoe Shop. It's going to be a little bit of a tongue twister. It's written by Eve Titus and pictures by Larry Ross. Looks like it's published by the Parents Magazine Press in New York. Mr. Sylvester Shah was the best shoemaker in town. His shop was an old building on an old street between Mr. Brown's bakery and Mr. Green's grocery. All day long he sat and fixed people's shoes. His shop was always neat and trim and tidy, just as shipshape as a ship. So he named it Mr. Shah's Shipshape Shoe Shop. His cat, Shoo, always took naps on top of the shoes on the shelves. There were ladies' shoes, men's shoes, girls' shoes, boys' shoes, and baby shoes. Shoes with high heels, low heels, and even shoes with no heels. Shoes with square toes, round toes, and even shoes with no toes. White shoes, black shoes, yellow shoes, pink shoes, blue shoes, orange shoes, and even purple and polka-dotted shoes. Some were even so old that only Mr. Shah could make them look new again. He loved fixing shoes, and next best, he loved looking at ships and boats. Every Wednesday at 12 o'clock noon, whenever the weather was nice, he'd close his Shipshape Shoe Shop and walk down to the docks. There, he'll see fishing boats and fireboats and ferries, police boats, patrol boats, and barges and tugs, big ocean liners, and big, beautiful cruise ships. Mr. Shah's secret wish was to sail the 7 seas of the world, to see strange, faraway lands, and to meet strange, faraway people. But trips on the ships cost much too much for Mr. Shah. After he paid the rent to the landlord and leftover money didn't go very, very far. But he liked to watch the lucky ones who sailed, how happy they looked, hurrying aboard. His favorite ship was the SS Sheba. At sailing time, the band always played, and excited passengers leaned over the rail, waving to their friends who stayed behind. Sometimes Mr. Shah waved back, pretending he knew someone who was sailing. When the ship's great whistle sounded, the Sheba would swing out toward the open seas, slowly at first, then faster and faster. Not till the big, beautiful ship was a far white dot on the waters would Mr. Shah go back to his Shipshape Shoe Shop. One morning, there was a letter from the landlord. Mr. Shah poured some milk in a saucer and said, "Sad news, Shoo. After 20 long years here, I've got to go shopping for a new shop. I'll never find one with rent as low as I pay here, but at least I can try. I'll hunt high and low." Just then, in rushed the baker and the grocer to show Mr. Shah their letters. There's what the letter said. "Dear Mr. Shah, your shoe shop is ship-shape, but the building it is old and shaky. The fire chief says it would burn very fast if it ever caught fire, so it's not safe to stay there much longer. You and your next-door neighbors, Mr. Brown and the baker and Mr. Green the grocer, will have to move 30 days from now, and that's when the building will be torn down by the city. Good luck, and I hope you find another place for your Shipshape Shoe Shop. Very truly yours, Sheldon S. Shrewsbury, landlord. Said Mr. Brown, I can't pay a high rent someplace else. 30 days from now, I'll have to close Brown's Bakery and start working in my cousin's cookie factory. Said Mr. Green, I'll have to close Green's Grocery and go work in my friend's fish market. Sylvester Shah, you're the best shoemaker in town. Franklin Flair owns the biggest shoe shop in town. He's your friend. Why don't you go ask him for a job? Before Mr. Shah could speak, a big car stopped outside, and who should walk in but Franklin Flair himself. Sylvester, my friend, I heard the news, said he. Won't you come to work in my Flair and Square shoe shop? I'll give you good pay and work space in my front window with a view of the harbor and the ships you love. You and Shoo can live in the big back room. Franklin, my friend, I'd be honored to work for you. Your Fair and Square shoe shop is a fine place, but I can't do it, not just yet. Why not? Asked all three men in surprise. Mr. Shah stitched a strap on a sandal and said, because I'd rather shop for a new Shipshape Shoe Shop. In my own shop, I am always my own master, which gives me an extra special feeling. But if I worked for someone else, even for my wonderful friend Franklin Flair, I wouldn't be my own master anymore. Sylvester, my friend, I understand. Good luck. If you don't find the right shop, come to work for me. Of all my fine shoemakers, you'd be the finest by far. After everyone had gone, Mr. Shah said to Shoo, today is Wednesday, my looking at ships day. Tomorrow, I'll look at shops. Today, I'll look at ships. And he locked the door and left. Down at the docks, he stopped to admire the Sheba. Just as the sailor came off the ship carrying some shoes, do you know of a good shoemaker? Asked the sailor. Mr. Shah smiled. I'm a shoemaker. May I be of help? You certainly can. These are the Captain Shipley's shoes. We sell tonight. How long will it take you to fix them? Mr. Shah examined the shoes. About an hour, sailor. I'm Sylvester Shah of Mr. Shah's Shipshape Shoe Shop. And I'm Sailor O'Shea. You look like a man I can trust. Bring the shoes aboard when you're ready and ask for me. They shook hands and Mr. Shah hurried off with the shoes. Soon as he was working hard to make them look new again. These are a sea captain's shoes, said he to Shoo. Imagine they've traveled all over the world. The job done, he practically ran back to the ship, all excited and delighted to what would happen next. And then it happened. His feet marched up the gangway, and before he could say, Mr. Shah's Shipshape Shoe Shop, there he stood aboard the big white ship. Sailor O'Shea took the shoes and told Mr. Shah to wait. When he returned, he paid for the work and said that Captain Shipley wanted to see him. The shoemaker was worried. Hadn't he done a good job? Up to the top deck they went, to the captain's quarters, where a crowd of people stood talking and eating. The captain came over. Glad to meet you, Mr. Shah. I'm mighty particular about my shoes, you know, and you did just about the best job I've ever seen. Have fun at my party. Ever been aboard my ship before? I've never been on any ship. This is my first time. Really? I'll have Sailor O'Shea show you around. Up and down and around went Mr. Shah and Sailor O'Shea, and the ship was much more wonderful than Mr. Shah had ever dreamed. There were swimming pools and elevators and dining rooms and playrooms and libraries and lounges. The sleeping cabins were cozy with the finest of furniture. Far below were the big engines that made the ship go. Up above were the maps and the charts and all the things the captain needed for steering the good ship Sheba safely and swiftly across the sea. Best of all, thought Mr. Shah, everything was neat and trim and tidy, just as shipshape as his own Shipshape Shoe Shop. Back at the party, the captain had news for Mr. Shah. I've told my friends how well you mend shoes, so be prepared for more business. As for my parties, there's one every time we sail, and you're invited. Mr. Shah thanked him and had some strawberry shortcake. Then the all ashore sounded loud and clear, and Mr. Shah and the other visitors had to leave. This time, standing on the shore, he waved to the people he knew, and they all waved back as the Sheba sailed away. Next morning, a sailor and a ship's cook came with their captain's shoes and some of their own. When the shoes were all fixed, the sailor said, "You're certainly make old shoes look new again, Mr. Shah. We'll tell our friends on other ships about you." Later on, more sailors came in with shoes, but Mr. Shah still had to close an hour earlier so that he could start shopping for a new shop. The first afternoon, Mr. Shah did a lot of looking. Uptown, downtown, all around the town, he looked. On long streets and short streets, on wide streets and narrow streets, on straight streets and crooked streets. But nowhere did he find a shop that suited him. If the shop was nice, the rent was too high. If the rent was right, the shop was too tiny. And none of them were near the harbor. So small were some of the shops that Mr. Shah saw that he knew there wouldn't be room enough for his shoe flexing machines and his work table and his bench. All afternoon long he kept looking, and for many afternoons after that. But the more he looked, the gloomier he got, and the more tired his poor feet felt. He saw the shops on dark streets, he saw shops on dirty streets, he saw shops so drab and dingy and dreary that if he had rented one of them, he would have had to put up a new sign, Mr. Shah's Shabby Sloppy Shoe Shop. Every day Mr. Shah stopped for a shoe shop, whether the weather was good or whether the weather was bad. He spent less and less time fixing shoes and more time tramping the streets. He walked from morn till noon till night, and his legs ached even when he was sitting down. But it was no use. He just couldn't find what he wanted. One day he looked at the calendar on the wall and said, "Shoo, the 30 days are nearly over, and I'm tired of tramping all over town. I give up. I'll have to close my Shipshape Shoe Shop. I'll certainly miss it, but things could be worse. I'm glad my friend Franklin has a good job for me." And he went down to the Fair and Square Shoe Shop. Mr. Flair showed Mr. Shah the big back room and the big backyard with trees for Shoo Shoo to climb, and the sunny workspace in the front window. Sylvester, my friend, I hope you'll be happy here. Tomorrow at noon, my truckmen will pick up your things. Mr. Shah stared out at the ships in the harbor. He didn't think he'd ever be truly happy again, not without his own Shipshape Shoe Shop. But he said, Franklin, my friend, I'll try to be happy. I'd better go back and pack. See you tomorrow. Out in the street, he saw that the Sheba was in port, and he decided to tell Captain Shipley his new address. Going up the gangway, he met the captain coming down. Hello, Mr. Shah. Haven't seen you aboard ship in ages. There's a party tomorrow, and I hope you'll be there. Tomorrow's the last day of my Shipshape Shoe Shop. I'll probably be much too sad to come to your party. And Mr. Shah told the captain all that had happened. Too bad, Mr. Shah, but if Mr. Flair's such a good friend, won't you be happy working in his shoe shop? Mr. Shah sighed. Maybe I will, and maybe I won't. Isn't it great to be master of your own ship, Captain? For me, it's just a great to be master of my own shop. True enough, Mr. Shah, but do come to the party. There'll be good things to eat and people to meet. You'll cheer up and start smiling again. Won't you come? I'll try, said Mr. Shah, and he went back to his shop. Mr. Flair's truck arrived the next afternoon. They carried out the shoe-fixing machinery and the bench and the work table and all Mr. Shah's belongings. Mr. Shah wiped away a tear or two, and then he said, Please hang my shipshape sign in Mr. Flair's back room. It'll remind me that I once had my own shoe shop. Hop in and ride with us, said one of the truckmen. But just then, Sailor O'Shea came by in a jeep. Captain's compliments, Mr. Shah. He sent me to fetch you. Goodness, I forgot about the party. May I bring my cat? Certainly, Mr. Shah. Just get right in. And away they went, down to the docks, up to the gangway, and straight to the captain's party. While he was having some chocolate ice cream, he saw Mr. Flair having some vanilla ice cream. Then the captain came over and smiled and said, Come with me, Mr. Shah, and you too, Mr. Flair. Down, down, down they walked to the shop of the ship's carpenter. First, the captain and Mr. Shah, and then Mr. Flair and Sailor O'Shea. And when Mr. Shah saw what he saw, he was too surprised to speak. Behind a wooden fence in the corner were his shoe-fixing machines, his workbench and his work table and his shoe shelves. And hanging from the ceiling, and not too high and not too low, was his own ship-shaped sign. Mr. Flair came over and shook his hand and said, Congratulations, but Mr. Shah was still too surprised to say a single word. Next, the captain said, I appoint you ship's shoemaker. So many ship's people went to our Shipshape Shoe Shop that I brought your Shipshape Shoe Shop to my ship. Sylvester, my friend, I'll explain, said Mr. Flair. The captain came to my shop today to talk things over. The captain came, we knew never be happy with your own shop, without your own shop, and that you'd be twice as happy with your own shop on a ship. So when the truckman came, I had your things sent here. The captain smiled. Shoo will be ship's cat. There'll be plenty of shoes for her master to fix. This time we're off to a trip around the world. Shoo sprang to the top shelf, purring happily away, and that was when Mr. Shah spoke at last. My own Shipshape Shoe Shop on a ship. I can't find words to thank you enough, but I certainly wish I could purr. And after that, last I heard, Mr. Shah and Shoo had sailed around the world 10 times. Faraway places, faraway people. They saw them all. He's known as the best shoemaker on the 7 seas, and whenever the Sheba is down at the docks, sailors from all the other ships all stand in line to have their shoes made new again in Mr. Shah's Shipshape Shoe Shop.